Call this meeting of the Transportation Committee to open it. And our first part of business is to approve the minutes from last session.
Motion to approve May 7th, 2019 minutes.
Second.
I need a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
We want to discuss the abandonment of Linhart Road, WA 156. Mr. Kyle Reed will pass out some points on it. Mr. Reed, are you ready now?
Yes, sir. Slideshow ready to roll.
I apologize, Mr. Hart, we were attempting to get the
Yeah, I
information up on
understand.
the screen, I'm sorry. It's not working properly.
That's all right, Katie.
We're going to proceed with everything on the screen. Is there anyone here who would like a copy of this for any reason?
All right. Linhart Road, something we've discussed going on a couple of years now, the abandonment of a portion of the road. It's a residential road that is being used as a cut-through. Residents have been concerned about traffic. Sharp Engineering, Sharp Manufacturing on the other end, is concerned about the proximity of the road to their manufacturing facility. The council passed Resolution 2017-09, consenting to the abandonment of a portion of Linhart. When we did that, it was worked out that the cul-de-sac would go in a particular place. As y'all may remember, whenever we had discussed it, the road was not centered in the right-of-way. And once we got down to brass tacks and started negotiating where the cul-de-sac would be, the adjacent property owners did not want the cul-de-sac being that much in their yard to center it up in the right-of-way that we currently had. So we had to pull the cul-de-sac back. So whenever we brought it to y'all, it was approximately 300 feet, and now it's approximately somewhere around 375 feet. But we have an exhibit and to go along with where we're going to put the cul-de-sac, so we don't have the ambiguity at that point for y'all to consider again. So to go back through the requirements of the ordinance, Linhart Road is currently and has been a county road still in use by the general public, and signs have been posted of the abandonment, and they're placed at the point of termination on July 10th, 2018. We have received no comments, anybody saying that they didn't want the abandonment to happen or that anything really from those signs.
And just for public knowledge, I did review the signs. They, to me, were posted as they should, very easily readable to anybody that's driving down there. And I feel like, Mr. Hart, they have been posted actually longer than what we're required to do. And anybody that is going up and down that road, I drove it at night just to make sure that my headlights would hit. So I do feel like we did an adequate job of making sure that those that travel Linhart Road or would be traveling would have knowledge of what we are talking about today.
Mr. Reed, you had a drawing.
Yes, sir.
That would be very helpful.
Can I walk up there and talk? Yes, and I tried to put it on your PowerPoint, and it actually made it crash, so I lost the PowerPoint, had to redo it. But this is a drawing of the proposed, where the proposed cul-de-sac will be, and the copy of this will be entered into the minutes of the meeting. So you see where the road currently goes outside the right-of-way. The cul-de-sac was going to go up around this area to tie into that asphalt driveway. But that would shift the the cul-de-sac over into their yard, and they did not want it there. So that's why it got pulled back down the road back toward Anderson Street.
These property owners in the back, they are all notified just like what?
Yes,
And no issues from there?
no issues.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue to move to the abandonment of Linhart Road as stated, as long as that's added to the backup material for council to review.
There will be a staff report with all the information
Okay.
and a new resolution made.
All in favor?
Aye. Ms. Brock, would that be on October 15th?
Yes, we can put that as part of Mr. Hart's committee report and action requested on the October 15th meeting.
That's good.
But just for clarity purposes, I did not hear a second on that.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
The next is a discussion on Chapter 16 of Oconee County Codes of Ordinance. Mr. Kyle?
Yes, we were tasked by the committee to come back with recommendations that to clean up some of the things in Chapter 26 and to look at some of the issues specifically as they pertain to subdivision roads. The ordinance that we currently have is straight out of the highway design manual and sometimes is not very workable when you're doing a subdivision. Willow Creek, one that's coming up here in just a second, there are some items in that we would look to change and some of the same issues with those roads. Specifically, there's really nothing to be done with the K values. Stop and sight distance is pretty much just, it is what it is. We could sit there and say, lower the speed limit of the road, but in all of our experience, Sheriff's Department experience, putting out traffic counters to check speed, people don't go slower. They go faster. But some of the issues with where roads tie into a main road or the one-way in, one-way out road of a subdivision, putting those 400 feet apart cuts off a lot of developable space, makes lot configurations hard, those kind of things. Some of the items in the ordinance, like the slope being 12%, sometimes it's very difficult with our terrain to keep a slope at 12%. So we've been in discussions with the fire chief, emergency management, to see if there would be any wiggle room with that. And they think there may be, as long as they're not having to park on those slopes. And that's the big issue. So those kind of slopes for, 100 feet, something like that may not be adjacent to a house because you're going to be in worse terrain when you're trying to climb that kind of hill. That may be workable on that end to make it a little bit easier for subdivisions. So we have a lot of recommendations that we've gone through with other departments, administration. I know that there's a planning meeting coming up and that y'all are going to be discussing some of the corridor design stuff and things like that may tie into this. So would like to get that kind of information all, Adam work out everything, Mr. Chapman work out everything that he's got on his end. And then we come together because our ordinances tie so strongly together on that end.
Do we need any type of motion, or are we just gonna let that go to committee?
Just for information.
Our next discussion is Willow Creek subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I make a motion to add public comment just for clarity on the minutes? Public comment on the discussion regarding acceptance of roads in Willow Creek.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, that's over. Thank you.
You want to let these people come up and speak, or you want to let them just go into our discussion?
Yeah, we'll do the same.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes, a little history on Willow Creek.
Just point of order. If you'll come up there and just state your name, just so everybody.
Name is Thomas Wagner, Willow Creek subdivision. This subdivision was back in 2007 started in 2 phases. Okay? They were not at the same time developed. And the roads then were not approved originally by the county. And thus, I would like to defer then my rest of my comments to Mrs. Amy Gant. She is the primary owner of the 64 lots out there that remained. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Amy Gant, primary owner of Tiger Art Construction that purchased Willow Creek Highway 11 from Community First Bank. I had called Harold Knight because Harold Knight and Laverne Backman were in charge of this neighborhood back when it started during the boom when they had developed Grandview. The county had done the roads there, and then they started with the county working on the roads. I just received a text message because Harold couldn't be here, and he sends me this message just a few moments ago that said, all of the inspections passed on those roads in Twinview subdivision, the inspectors were Jimmy White and Wesley Galloway. So at the time, he's saying that the roads were passed and inspected. They were to the county ordinance at the time that they were built, I think in 2007. And we know that Phase 2 was approved. We have that in the minutes. There seems to be missing documentation where the county or the committee spoke about Phase 1, but logically, they had to have spoken about this comment that Harold's made, that they passed, inspected by Jimmy White and Wesley Galloway. And we've brought in all of the experts in previous meetings, Hubbard Paving, et cetera, to go over all of the issues to show that they were done to the county specifications, even to the fact that a road was moved and diverted to meet the county requirements. And it has a county sign made by the county at the beginning of the road. The people who purchased lots in the initial sale, I think there were actually 15. Not everybody has built a house on those. They were told that it was a county road, so I would not like them to be defrauded at this point that it was not approved, because it was. And since then, just this year, or just in the last year or so, too, we've had 5 new homes purchased and built. Neighborhood just got bush hogged, and in speaking with Kyle, we have talked about on the grade putting up a sign that says blind corner, adding some lights from Blue Ridge Electric, which they have said that they would put in. I do have, and I think it's actually on my laptop computer. I downloaded it and it's not on my portable. I apologize if I thought I had it. But we brought out, I think Linda brought out, we had the West Union Fire Department, who is our fire department. Willow Creek is very unique. It's literally in the heart of Oconee County. We have a Westminster address. We have Walhalla City Water. We have Seneca High School. We have West Union Fire Department. We have Fort Hill Gas, Blue Ridge Electric, AT&T, and I think that's all of our utilities. But we cover the whole county because we're literally in the center of the county. It is clearly very close to a very big investment by the county with all of the industrial on Highway 11, which makes it a great neighborhood for bringing people in. And like I said, we just had a bush hog to continue that building cycle. But I look at it a little differently because Phase 2 was approved, and I know they say they need access, which I will willingly deed them access. That needs to be maintained morally and legally by the county, Phase 2, and we're willing to work with them within reason. I'm just a small-time builder, just a family mom, and I've got a husband who does something else, and we invested in this. We're not big time, but we're looking to go to the standards that the county had done and their intention at the stated time that they built the roads, because they were all involved. Everybody, and we did this last time, and that's in the notes. We had all those men come in and show what they had done and that it had been approved. So I don't know where that paper is. I don't know where it is in the minutes, but again, I go back to logic. Phase 2 was approved. I don't know how you could approve Phase 2 without knowing Phase 1 was approved. So again, I just divert to Harold's text that he sent me moments ago because he couldn't be here, stating that all inspections passed on the roads in Twin View subdivisions. The inspectors were Jimmy White and Wesley Galloway, and we are willing to there's a few little line item things that we can do, and we're willing to work with that. We think it's a very valuable subdivision to the county. I think it's an asset. And we believe, based on when the people purchased the lots, it was all county, and all the county people were out there telling you what to do. So that's what I base my experience on everything up to this point. And we sure would like to get those roads turned over.
Council have any questions?
How many property owners do you have in that subdivision?
Property owners, well, we had 7.
Don't have to be exact.
At least 20 to 25, probably, somewhere in that range. There's 50 lots or so. 4 are detention ponds, undevelopable, and the rest can be built on. A few probably not. There's some steep lots that probably will always remain and they might end up being a conservatory.
Any other questions?
What's the condition of the roads now?
Fair to good. There's a couple potholes, alligator cracking, but just small areas.
So does it appear that it was built to county code at the time that it was constructed?
Yeah. Yes, whenever we were directed by council to go out and core the roads, forgive me, I can't remember exactly what that date was, but we were directed to go out and core the roads, and they had 5 inches of asphalt and 2 inches of, or 5 inches of stone, 2 inches of asphalt, except for one area that was a little soft, and I believe that's the area that's alligator now. And it may have been just a place where it got wet and mud came up through the subgrade, so or through the stone. So I'm sure it had 5 inches uniformly over the road or nominally over the road. So that was never a question. As Ms. Gant said, the county did follow the construction from start to finish, as far as I understand, and what I was a party to. I didn't work for the county at the time. I worked for the engineer that designed the roads. But as I understand, the proof rolls were passed, everything, anything that may have needed to be dug out was dug out, and everything passed on that end. The crux of it being, when you design a road, you design it to lines and grades that meet the minimum standards, and whenever it was graded, it wasn't graded to that. So that's really what this all boils down into a nutshell. And then the developer, I'm sure after the roads got accepted, was intended on when the Phase 2 roads were accepted, intended on offering those to the county. Just never did before they went into foreclosure.
Mr. Reed,
Yes, sir.
those things that she named that she would add to this road, is there anything else that should be done?
The only thing that is outside of small, simple things to do on this, and I can go down through the list and kind of go through what we've discussed to work out. It was noted that the shoulders were not 4 foot minimum. That's in specific places, normally mostly around pipes. And really, we just look for 4 foot nominal. It can be 3'8". I mean, we're not gonna get out there with a tape measure, on that end. But generally, the roads have 4 foot shoulders on them. The road intersection angle was less than 75 where it meets the Critter Road. That can be handled with striping because it's got such a wide road intersection that it can be turned in there and handled with striping. And it's 72 degrees compared to 75, so it's not like it's close. Intersecting roads do not have a minimum separation of 400 feet. Again, that was what we were discussing, that may be difficult for development of a subdivision. Intersecting roads were not designed to include a leveling area at intersections. So the roads that were designed in there, whenever the hill was not cut down far enough, where the roads take off from the intersection, they're steeper, and they weren't graded down as much as they likely, or as they were designed for. Thank you, God. Thank you. Inlet and outlet protection, not protected from scour. That's generally filter fabric that you can buy at any store in riprap. Not all right-of-way areas were stabilized. It's just seed and straw. Cul-de-sacs are undersized. That would probably be the biggest issue. The cul-de-sacs out there now are 66 and 67 feet respectively. I've got a letter from Chief King that I can provide to y'all where the fire department would require 90 feet for a cul-de-sac, so 23 and 24 more feet added to the diameter of the cul-de-sac. And that's something that can be discussed further. As far as the way it was designed with 50 foot diameter, or a 50 foot radius, 100 foot diameter right of way. So there should be right of way to build the cul-de-sac in there, as far as not having to get on other people's property. But, again, that's my understanding is the major concern with doing, having a cul-de-sac that big. So, whenever we get to the motion part of this, it may be something that can be discussed. This is, again, they went out there, they drove the trucks around the cul-de-sac, and this was their recommendation. That recommendation, as far as I understand, smaller trucks have been attained, those kind of things. So it may be something that would be a consideration, but that's not Roads and Bridges. That's Chief King, and I'd hate to speak for him to that end. No testing was done for thickness or compaction. Again, we were out there and then we cored it, and everything on that end was sufficient. Culvert pipe construction was not verified. The road's not sinking over where the pipes were installed, so that's the roads have been there between 10 and 12 years. Maximum centerline road slope exceeds 12%. Again, like we were talking about earlier, that's not really where houses are, so that's something that could be looked at by fire, and possibly whenever we update our ordinance may change to that end, if y'all would agree to that. Some culvert pipes appear to be installed incorrectly. That is where one invert for a cross-line pipe is higher than the inlet of the water that's coming to it, and I believe it's 3 to 4 inches. It's not much, so that can be handled by a calculation and looking at if that pipe sized properly. Roadway is not centered within the platted right-of-way in several locations. That is mainly at the entrance. There is a common area at the entrance where the roadway
Very
swings
small,
out.
yes.
So they would be able to, and I believe Ms. Gann had talked to the other property owner that owns the property where the road goes on to further up the hill, and that they would agree to give right-of-way for the roadway at that point, which would be a requirement. we'd have to have 50 foot of right of way. And the road generally centered in it. And then sight distance is inadequate for one of the intersection roads. And that's where we had talked about, the K values and signs, to try to mitigate somebody not being able to see the 150 foot that's required by the ordinance, for stop and sight distance. So, like Ms. Gant was talking about, a street light in the sag, and then blind hill signs before you get to the crest. And that's generally what we do. If somebody puts in a driveway on one of our county roads, then we have a blind drive sign. We don't deny access. We put up a sign to caution people driving about the hazard.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reed, some of the concern, you brought this up in the last, it's been maybe last year when we kind of talked about Willow Creek. We talked about the acceptance of, phase two originally, and it seems like from what, I wasn't around when phase two was accepted, neither were you, but from my understanding, phase two was accepted with the correction of some of the stuff in phase one. Could be completely wrong in that, but it seems to be some of the stuff that was talked about, that, the shoulders for 4 foot minute, there was a lot of those things that the county said, okay, we'll, kind of like what you're saying today, not a huge deal, but something that could be corrected. But the last meeting that we talked about, number one was the cul-de-sac right-of-ways for fire protection vehicles, and school bus issues as well on there. Those were, from what I could tell, were grossly undersized based on what I've seen out there. But that's not a huge deal to go in there. Besides, I guess we'd have to get right away from the property owners, or I guess you would have to get.
It should already be platted out.
It should
to
be,
50,
so the 90
100,
feet.
100 feet
Okay.
right away for the 90 foot cul-de-sac, depending on how it was recorded. But as far as the way that it was designed and the as-built that I have, it is showing.
Okay.
Showing that.
So it does exist, it just didn't get out that far.
Yeah, they just, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that's one of my biggest things on there is the cul-de-sacs, and then some of the culvert pipes issues that I have, some of them can be handled, the riprap and stuff like that. But, my biggest holdup on those two things is if we take a road that we know the pipes under it are not where they're supposed to be, the first time it washes out, we're gonna spend an awful lot of money correcting what's in there. So, that to me, I don't know if that would fall back on properties owner association or what we could do, or if there's specific cost associated with some of those. I know we've had cost 170 to 200,000 estimated to fix what we have in here. Is that to fix everything that you were stating in here, or is that just to get to where?
That was the cost from 2014, 2015. That was the cost from 2015, and the estimated cost, so it was nothing hard, pin down numbers, it was moving dirt. Part of that was doing away with one of the cul-de-sac roads and regrading some of the hills and repaving. A lot of work, a lot of reconstruction, work on that end. The pipe issues, they can be looked at, and somebody can, an engineer can run the calcs and see if those pipes would be at capacity. But the estimate that was given was to bring up everything to standard, and it was doing away with one of the roads.
Right.
It tied into.
And I know the one, I guess it's the incline of going in, and maybe this is in there, maybe it's not, but it's extremely more steeper than what I've seen in roads where it looks like.
Yes, it's over 12%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just the turn's too tight. And I don't know how you correct that besides bring it up or make it longer.
The radii on the turns
Yeah, if
going
we
into
brought
the
one of our
intersection
longer
roads.
fire trucks in there, there's no
Chief-
way it would
Chief
hang.
King and West Union did look at that, and they felt like they could maneuver those, radii with the width of the throat of the intersection as the roads widen out at that.
Yeah, we have
at that
videos, I
point.
just don't have them. I can get them to you. We have videos of the fire trucks coming in
Right.
and doing that.
Well, my issue is they have to maneuver through it rather than coming to a fire when you don't really think about those things. And I know we've had some issues that we've had to address later because we've tore up areas because you're going to a fire soon, you don't remember that specific area. That's my worry is if we don't correct that and we accept the roads without correcting it, if we destroy our equipment trying to go, because our main thing is making sure we get to the fire. And I don't want a fire truck hung up on it that, causes additional property damage. Just a thought, maybe it's not an issue, but I just want to make sure that we get clarity on that if we do.
And Chief King would provide that. He would be part of the people that are part of the group that would be working through the conditions, if that's what y'all chose to do, if y'all wanted us to look at what conditions we would set forth for the roads to be accepted for phase one and then ultimately phase two as well, because that was already been accepted.
Do you feel like the roads not being accepted is delaying the continuing building in there?
Well, I think that it definitely has an impact. I mean, first of all, it has an impact on the people who purchased property under the knowledge that they were going to have public roads, and they were going to be maintained by the county. That was part of their contract. So, but yes, I do think that people look at that long-term. It changes HOA dues. I'm not sure, when I talked to Kyle, I'm not sure which incline prior to the cul-de-sacs or after the cul-de-sacs. Because you can get trucks in there. I mean, I don't know what property, I don't know how you could tear anything up. I mean, we built all these roads on we've put all these houses on phase two. We've had all these big trucks in there. So I just from clarity to me.
If I may, and this is going by memory, but the roads, whenever they were built, they tied and they widened, like they were going to radius out, but instead of radiusing out and staying with one consistent radius, they kind of just triangled into the intersection. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, is turning onto the road and not having a constant radius may cause the issue with the truck falling off into the ditch. That's all. So that's not a huge issue. It's just, and that was noted in the report by Wesley White, and we had discussed that whenever they were turning in with the radius.
Okay.
Because I think they were, and again, it's a little misleading, but it was somewhere less than 12, 15 feet for the radius. But when you widen out asphalt and you have a wider area in there, that's why they could get the trucks in, because the road's actually wider than 20 feet with two 25-foot radiuses on either side. They use that asphalt to trapezoid into the road.
Because there's no
instead of-
ditches at the end of the cul-de-sac, so you're talking
Right,
about
going into the road, where it intersects with the main road, yes.
Right, okay, I
I
understand.
just don't want to lose a fire truck down into the ditch and we lose a row of houses because of the turn, because if it turns and gets stuck, and that's one of my concerns, is because what could be one house could be four houses. So I just want to make sure that if we get that we correct
Yes.
that. Because unfortunately, when they go off the road, they don't come back on.
Yeah, and
So,
are we talking about Cozy Hill or Comet?
Both of them, I think, had shy radii on the,
Because they have rock, they have, riprap
Right,
rock,
yeah.
there before you turn in.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not a cliff, so, okay.
the plumbing on those trucks, and there's a lot of plumbing underneath and valving and all that other stuff
Sure.
that makes them low slung. But that, again, that would be reviewed. Can be reviewed.
And I'd be glad to send those videos once we do them, or we can have them come back and do it again too, so.
Is the homeowner association interested in doing some of the corrections at all? Or as a developer, would y'all be interested in doing any of those corrections that are in there, like the cul-de-sacs being undersized, or any of the,
Well, as a developer, I know that I'm willing to pay for the sign, and I'm willing to work with Blue Ridge to get the lights, but the homeowners, we'd have to have a meeting about, I mean, you're talking about, there are houses at the end of these cul-de-sacs and that I'm looking at, and I'm not quite sure how to read this plat on the curvatures of the end of it, and what the, I'm just not an expert on reading this, but I keep going back to the fact that they approved it, and then they approved phase two, and then they have a different standard that they're holding us to after the fact. So I don't know, I guess, there's curvatures here. Okay, because this is all I have. Okay, well then I guess I don't. Okay. I know that we would like to make Willow Creek, Highway 11, as desirable to keep home values high, because we've had great success with home sales in there, and, recently bush hogging and getting these lots ready so that we can continue as, right now, as the market's good and the rates are low, we'd like to take advantage of continuing that, not knowing what's in the future. I mean, just as the previous developers, were working with the county, and then boom, everything fell out of the sky. So I certainly know that when we met with Kyle, signs and lights are not an issue. Fixing a pothole is not an issue. Adding some asphalt, to extend the cul-de-sacs, if we're talking 50 feet of asphalt, I don't know what that bid is, and I don't know what that would do to people's yards. And I'm not sure, to be honest, knowing every inch of that property at the top of the second cul-de-sac, it goes down onto someone else's property. So, I think that there might be 50 feet, but it goes down. So I'm not even sure how to use the topography at the top of that second cul-de-sac to bring it out. And again, I don't own the one lot to the right at the top of that. So that right of way, I own one lot on the bottom side, but there's also houses there, and there's also a house on the other side of the cul-de-sac. In phase one, we have 5 houses now, 5 or 6 houses in phase one. 5 houses in phase one, 5 houses. 1 just being built, correct? I'm not even sure she's moved in. So
3 on the cul-de-sac.
3 on the cul-de-sacs, correct. 2 on one cul-de-sac and 1 on another cul-de-sac.
Ms. Brock, would you have a recommendation on what you think, how we should proceed?
If I may, sir, I realize, Ms. Gant, that you've been through this a long time. I know you've got the email back and forth even on this. I'd really like to go out there and write it with the fire chief and with Kyle. Let's come up with a more feasible plan instead of something in writing. Physically go out there and look at it, walk it. And you said that you were covered by the West Union Fire Department, and I realize that the county is controlled by a fire marshal who does set the standards for these road provisions, but I do believe their truck is a little smaller. If it's not in their capital vehicle replacement plan to add a larger truck over time, if that's something that we could accept. I think at some point, we need to all come and be a little more fluid. Kyle had just really gone through this list in a way off at the top of his head that I'd like to be able to do that with. And I have studied every document we have on this, but physically have not studied certain areas of this. And I'd be happy to meet with Ms. Gant and all of us go through this to find a solution that would work for the community and for the county.
That area will fall under the Bountyland subdivision, because it's outside. I know Twin View is outside of the protected.
And as close as it
area.
is to the OITP, I'm thinking it's gonna fall in that Bounty Land substation as well, so
it
that may be
should,
something.
because that area is an unprotected, even though it's serviced by that.
And I rode through there, but I was riding through looking with an eye for what it is and not necessarily to the specifics of the standards that were laid out here. It's a very nice development, by the way.
Which is a positive for y'all to come under the new substation that sooner or later will get built. I know we're working on it. But that is a big positive for everybody that sits in there from, you know.
Is it the empty lot on South Cove Road that you're talking
It's
about?
not, it hasn't been located yet, but
Oh, it hasn't been
it will be within 5 miles. Right now, that Critter Road is outside 5 miles of any responding fire department, so, you know. But, you know, that will be better serviced for there, so it is, that's really kind of why I continue to bring that up. I just want to make sure that we need to get these things corrected, whether we correct them or we correct them with you, in the case that happens, because I've seen, has not happened in Oconee County, but I have seen when they've lost a fire truck and they cannot access the point because our fire trucks are quite larger than some of the smaller trucks. So, and,
Would that have not been a consideration when the county was building the roads, that they were approving them back in the day? I mean.
I wasn't involved in that. I just know that there's two sections. The culvert issue seems to be an easy one to fix, even if we have to dig it out and cut it and do that. That's, to me, doesn't seem the end of the world. But the cul-de-sacs being so small, they're smaller than what you have in phase two.
There's no cul-de-sac.
There's no cul-de-sac.
If
It
I
goes
may.
all the way around.
It's one big loop.
Yeah, it's just one big loop. So I get that in Twin View mixed up, so.
It used to be 35 feet, and these are 33 and 32, radius-wise. So it used to be 35 feet. As things gone along and regulations have gotten more improved, stricter, whatever you want to say, bigger fire trucks, all that other stuff, then they've grown. So before 2006, fire didn't control the cul-de-sacs. Now they control the cul-de-sacs, the fire marshal.
So it puts me in a pickle there because, they were approved at that standard. And certainly we can add, 5 feet of
Well, approved and accepted seem to be two different things, and that's one of the things
Sure.
why we've tried to clear up. And it's one of the first things we did back in 2012, and I know Mr. Kane was a big leadership in that because of these, it seemed like he said, she said a lot, and Mr. Kyle Reed and them really helped to try to quit this he said, she said stuff around. So it's a lot better than what it is, and sometimes when we accepted a phase two, it was as long as phase one is brought up, but it was never really truly noted, so we're sitting out there going, well, again, we're in a he said, she said, and I want to see continued development in there.
Oh, yes,
I want to
definitely.
make sure that, if or when we accept the roads, we're getting close to something. So maybe there's something as a homeowners association and the county can work out together that's benefit for everybody.
Well, we definitely would be willing to ride through and go through, and I would assume those who live would be an active part of that because they see water over the roads, which we don't have. They see detention ponds, not retention ponds. So they see when we have these deluge waters that, there's no overflow. We're not having issues with that. So they have a good input on that, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I make a recommendation, I guess, can y'all,
Got a proposed motion right here.
no, we do, yeah, well, That's what I was looking at, but that's-
Is that what y'all are asking for, this motion?
In some way, yes. In another way, I would like that motion to include the possibilities that the county and the homeowners association and/or the developer discuss the possibility of a special tax district should bringing the roads up to standard or to a minimum standard of acceptance be above and beyond what the county wishes to pay in and of itself.
yeah, that was.
The 2016 estimate, I believe, is roughly 165. We know
that was-
based.
That was based on changing the road system.
Correct.
Yeah.
We've just done so many things that we estimated in the 2015-16 eras, even mid-17, that sat dormant for some period of time that have come back to council based on inflation and times changing and all contractors being super busy. I just want to make sure that if we go above and beyond that, that there was an alternative we brought to the table rather than having to ask for more time again.
Do you know when your next transportation meeting is, Ms. Smith?
There is not another one scheduled yet for this year. We can make a special meeting, and if you'd like to, Mr. Hart, we can encompass some of the changes from Chapter 26 that we had just previously discussed, deferring back to that special meeting as well. Right, Kyle?
Mr. Chairman, it was my recommendation to just add this to you to create another meeting before we refer to county council for Ms. Brock to meet with the homeowners association, because there wouldn't be necessarily a motion needed on that. So that way, when and if it comes before council, we have everything in order, if that's.
That's fine with me.
So we're not making this motion as stated in this presentation?
I would prefer
Okay.
not be brought
Okay.
to county council at this time, because
Okay.
I think it would be simpler, and I think that we would need that time for us to go through this process, especially in more of a partnership style. Looking at the calendar, Mr. Hart, if it would be okay with you, Ms. Gann, I'll check with you as well, and anyone else who wants to attend, obviously you're all invited. Looks like December, possibly December 17th, one that would give us adequate time to thoroughly go through this. Two, it's one of the few meetings we don't have another committee meeting scheduled prior to council.
That's fine with me.
December 17th?
Mhm.
Okay, 4:30 PM?
Be fine.
I'm good with that.
That's good.
Ms. Gant will be with you prior to then, so we can come up with a plan that works both for the community and for the county.
Ms. Gann?
I just want to be clear that we're not trying to take that document and take their standards and their recommendations and create what they said. We're going to take a look at this based on the fact that we know that it was approved, not accepted, that we know that the standards were up to code and that Phase 2 was accepted. And we're going to take a look at the logical, best ways to make Willow Creek acceptable to council transportation. Because I know that report included cutting a road and making one large road and getting rid of it. So part of that cost, so when you talk about it, inflation or going up, I mean, we know that part of that cost would have been changing and creating a whole new road system there. So I just want to be clear that that's not the goal, that we're going to look at the roads.
I think your goal is to have the Willow Creek Phase 2 accepted into the system, correct?
Phase 1. Phase 2
I'm
has
sorry,
been accepted.
Phase 1,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
My goal is
So
to
the primary
deed you
goal
over
is that.
Phase 1 so that you
we'll come up
can.
with several options on how to get that goal
Right, that is correct.
accomplished.
I would like you to see Phase 1 so that I can deed that to you and you can then therefore start taking care of Phase 2 as it has been accepted.
And should there be variances required, then there'll be variances as required, and we'll have to bring those for council for review.
Okay.
We just don't want to set a precedent that, people can build a substandard road and then come begging to us once that company goes out of business. The successor and interest that come say, hey, they did it at Willow Creek, now fix subdivision A, B, C, D, E, F, G, on into the future. We have to be very careful with establishing precedent.
But to be very clear, it wasn't substandard. We had a meeting to show that it was not substandard. And two, phase two was already accepted. So we are a very unique neighborhood in that. In any other case, we probably would not have precedents. So this would not set precedents for any other neighborhood. We already have an approved and accepted phase two. And we already have proved that we did not build a substandard road for phase one or phase two. Standards did change from that time till now, so we're willing to work with that. So I don't see any legal precedents, but saying, oh, they did it at Willow Creek, you can say, no, Willow Creek had very unique circumstances due to the fact that phase two had been accepted and approved, and they did not have substandard roads, because we already, as we've noted, they were approved. They were accepted, they were approved, not accepted, because that paperwork did not get submitted. So no one could say that. They couldn't say, oh, they did substandard.
Oh, they'll say it.
Well, they could try, but you still have the documentation to say,
Right.
no, they had a meeting and brought all those men in, they proved it, they've cored it, they've shown it. Two, the county council had accepted phase two. So we are very unique, and it's frustrating, but we're blessed in that situation that we have this opportunity, because this is a central neighborhood, central to the county, great location, especially with all the new growth going on. So we'd like to see it continue, and definitely work with you all to get that county name that y'all have on our road, of the county there. So that's our goal.
Thank you, and thank all y'all that live there for being part of Oconee County and coming tonight, so. I did have one other business, if I may bring it up.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak a little bit about what I have seen other counties doing in certain areas that, as stop signs. Obviously, most of our county roads don't end in a red light. What I've seen, a lot of the rumble strips, and we've seemed like we've talked about it before, we've never gone, not speed bumps, but there's just literally 3 white strips that's, I don't know, 70, 80 feet before. I've noticed a lot, obviously it's because people aren't paying attention, but some of our roads especially are darker at night because we don't light county roads, and nor should we light a lot of them. But the rumble strips, what's the legality out of them, and what can we do to help, or is that something, what's your recommendation on something like that?
Cost more than anything, because it's a machine that sets those strips. But we did something similar at Lakeview because of folks crossing the road at night on Camp Road. But it is something I can look into and see what kind of cost we would incur for every stop condition.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be necessarily, I mean, it would be identified as those that have potential, whether it's a bank at the end of the road or whether it's a turn that ends. I've just noticed, like, and I hate to bring up a sore subject, but kind of like Brown Farm Road, the way when you come into that stop sign, the stop sign kind of disappears on the right, whereas some of those we probably need to have 2 stop signs to show. But it's like when we come up there, anywhere you go in Georgia, it's like everything has a rumble strip.
Talking about Steve Nicks.
Well, no, it'd be Brown Farm coming into Armstrong in that last turn. We've had to set the stop sign off to the right because it continually gets tore down.
Right.
And that turning onto Armstrong, but just a thought about, like, what is that machine, or what can we do? But it seemed like, I know it's helped if you look at from a standpoint in Georgia, what the state has done and everything. It seems like everywhere you go, you come to a red light and you're going across rumble strips. But it's just an identification, especially with some of the losses that we've had with people and banks and stuff. I know there is a cost associated with it, but I also know there's a safety aspect to it with the rural roads that we have, especially some of the mountain roads. I know people are going too fast, but to me, I hear every rumble strip I go across. If you run off on the side of the road now, or you even get close to it, you're hearing the grinds in there. I don't want to grind our pavement, obviously, but just what that would cost if you don't.
Well, that's what it is. It's just small grinding up small sections.
Any other business? Do I hear a motion?
So move to adjourn.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.